Khalyava is a Russian term for something you get for free, something you did not earn, deserve, or even take from someone else, but received simply because it was given to you. In this video, I will explain how the fundamental law of Khalyava is causing the current crisis in the West. My name is Elvira Bary. I'm an author and I've spent 20 years studying history, anthropology, and other social sciences that help us see the current political landscape as a whole. And when we see the full picture, we can make the right decisions. Khalyava could be a valuable item or a highly desired service. The key is that you really want it. The law of Khalyava is simple. Whoever gives out Khalyava gains power over others. Whoever receives it submits. In other words, Khalyava granted converts into a higher social status. In ancient times, a strong man could beat everyone in his tribe and claim his right to leadership. But he was only recognized as a leader if he also shared Khalyava with others. This could be military or hunting spoils, valuable weapons, or assistance in various matters. If the tribe saw nothing but violence from him, he wouldn't be a leader. As soon as he fell asleep, a rock would be dropped on his head. Oops. If there were plenty of Khalyava, it flowed down the social pyramid from the supreme leader to the very bottom. Thus, a vertical power structure formed where each higher rank became a source of Khalyava for those below, and therefore gained control over them. This is how military alliances and eventually states were formed. This is how hierarchy works in any society, whether it's a group of cool kids at school, a church council, or an international summit. The law of Khalyava is followed when everyone involved in distributing Khalyava is content with the balance between what they get and their social status. For example, in traditional families, the man is considered the head because he brings Khalyava into the home, and no one disputes his status. But if his grown-up son also wants to claim the title of head of the family, but still depends on his father's handouts, conflict is inevitable. The law of Khalyava is universal. It gives power not only to individuals, but to entire countries. The Spanish discovered America and found vast reserves of gold and silver. For several centuries, this Khalyava made them the most powerful nation in the world. By the early 19th century, Khalyava ran out, and one by one, Spanish colonies broke away from the empire. No more Khalyava, no more power and status. And there are countless examples like this throughout history. The United States is the leading country in the world not because it's the richest. It was already wealthier than most by the end of the 19th century. For America to become a global leader, it needed to apply the law of Khalyava. And that's exactly what happened after World War II. The USSR had seized Eastern Europe and acquired nuclear weapons, and America needed allies in Europe and the Far East to contain the potential threat. Khalyava, provided by America, took the form of loans to its allies, capital to rebuild economies destroyed by war, a vast consumer market for goods, military bases that guaranteed security, and the US Navy patrolling sea routes, thus significantly lowering transportation costs. In the second half of the 20th century, humanity entered an era of unprecedented prosperity, and this happened thanks to 5 key factors. The absence of large-scale wars for several decades, free movement of capital, allowing investments anywhere in the world, the invention of technologies for extracting and transporting petroleum products, fueling industry and transportation, the invention of the shipping container, which made global trade possible, the invention of the internet, enabling the free flow of information. America played a leading role in all of this, while the rest of the world benefited from its innovations. The US handed out Khalyava, and in return it gained power and social status. The Russians also tried to use the law of Khalyava and supplied their allies with fuel, weapons, money, and more. The USSR didn't collapse because its enemies defeated it. It fell apart because Khalyava ran out. There was nothing left to give, and Moscow's power evaporated immediately. Khalyava has its dark sides. First, those who give it out begin to see themselves as the center of the universe. They distance themselves from others and, not confronting their problems, simply ignore them. Again, this is a universal phenomenon. This is how all rulers have acted, whether Roman emperors or modern bureaucrats in Washington. Along with Khalyava comes arrogance, a complete belief in one's exceptionalism and their unquestionable right to teach others how to live. This is not done out of malice. Very often it's an attempt to give out Khalyava in the form of unsolicited advice, thus earning even more social credit. But there's more. Despite the fact that Khalyava benefits those who receive it, they don't always feel immense gratitude toward their benefactors. This happens when they are unable to repay kindness with kindness. In such cases, their social status automatically drops, and that's unbearable for people whose life purpose is to win, prove their worth, or dominate minds. If you'd like to see what your life purpose looks like, visit my website, elvirabary.com, and check out my Sphinx method. The link is in the description for this video. The exchange doesn't have to be equal, but it should be valuable in the eyes of both parties. For example, when a king grants land to a knight, the knight fights under the king's banner. But if the knight is old and can no longer serve, his status is immediately lowered, even though he may not lose material wealth. The inability to repay Khalyava leads to feelings of humiliation and resentment. In the 1990s, Russia went through a severe economic crisis, and Western humanitarian aid helped a great deal. Well, the part that wasn't looted by officials. Do you think Russians were grateful for this? No, because along with the aid came humiliation. If Russia had had the chance to offer a meaningful service to America and Europe in the 1990s, there would have been no resentment. It arose precisely because Russia had to accept Khalyava but wasn't prepared for the corresponding status. It wanted to be treated as an equal. It's not surprising that the strongest anti-American sentiments are found where America sends help. It may never reach the people and end up in the pockets of the local elite, but it's precisely this elite that spreads anti-American narratives. Take Gaza as an example. Its economy relied on donations from Europe, Canada, and the United States. Before the war, Israel provided infrastructure and complex services. Who did the Hamas try to kill on October 7th? Who did they take hostage? Who do they blame for all their troubles? It doesn't matter where you live, in a remote Siberian village, Los Angeles, or Tokyo. Self-identification, social status, and self-respect are the most important values for us. We are deeply unhappy if we feel we are being humiliated. Why do you think migrants, when they arrive to Europe, often act out or even commit terrorist attacks? It's because these young people feel anger and frustration toward their hosts, who have taken them in. They are not seen as equals. They are despised and feared, and they feel this keenly. I will soon release a book called The White Ghost's Empire, which tells the story of Russian immigrants who left for China after the Bolshevik Revolution. This happened 100 years ago, and tens of thousands of white Russian refugees found themselves in the same position as Syrian refugees in modern Germany. It was a very strange experience. During the times of rampant racism, white people arrived in an Asian country and found themselves not in the position of masters. This will be the second book in my Russian Treasures series. The first volume is already available on Amazon, and you can find the link in the description. To get updates about the release of the second book, sign up for the newsletter on my website. The human mind is quite inventive, and it's come up with a clever trick to ensure that you can receive Khalyava without feeling humiliated. In this case, the recipient of Khalyava must treat their benefactor as a sucker who has been duped out of money. In this situation, social status may not increase, but there will be no feelings of humiliation. I can illustrate this with the following example. I have an acquaintance who made a lot of money off American taxpayers for many years. She knew many education leaders because she met with them at conferences and was constantly networking. This acquaintance is a very charming and attractive woman. She invited high ranking officials to good restaurants and over lunch told them about her program aimed to improving teachers' qualifications. Education officials have budgets that they must spend for such purposes, and they spend it as they pleased, essentially giving away Khalyava. But how do you decide who to pay with government money? The answer is simple. All these people want to climb the career ladder, so they hand out Khalyava to those they think are useful or particularly charming. Neither discounts sexual attractiveness, as the desire to please a beautiful woman is deeply ingrained in our behavioral code, just like the ritual surrounding Khalyava. The scandals that have rocked America regarding misuse of funds have these very roots. The same thing is happening in Europe on all levels of power. The same story is unfolding in Russia. People like my acquaintance simply figure out what they can sell to officials. They know the right bureaucrats and understand how to present themselves and their projects, and in some cases, they even pay commissions. The result of this innocent embezzling of funds, done strictly legally and with good intentions, are as follows. The US is drowning in debt, and Europe is in crisis. How did this happen? We can view the situation we find ourselves in as a disease of society. And society will have to go through some unpleasant procedures to return to normal. The side effects of the medicine sometimes look even worse than the symptoms, but leaving things as they are is not an option. Fair and effective distribution of Khalyava is one of the most important questions of social organization. In countries with authoritarian regimes, it is concentrated in the hands of dictators, giving them unprecedented power. In democracies, however, Khalyava slips through the cracks. Power becomes ineffective, efforts and resources are dispersed, and despite technical and economic superiority, the West is powerless to deal with international hooligans. There's an old Russian joke. Mice went to a wise owl for advice. Everyone tries to eat us. What should we do? Become hedgehogs, the owl replied. If you are prickly, no one will eat you. The mice were happy, ran home, and then had a thought and rushed back to the owl. How do we become hedgehogs? The owl answered. My job is to provide a strategy. How you do it doesn't concern me. Now, I'll play the role of the owl, but I really hope that a wiser owl will come along and figure out the tactics. Let's begin by stating the facts. America will gradually eliminate unnecessary expenditures. Military technologies have advanced so much that Russia, which spends months fighting for some barn in Ukraine, no longer poses a threat to America. Since that's the case, the entire international security system built after World War II on American Khalyava no longer holds any economic or strategic value. But America is far away, and it's not like you can attack it with Russia's sole aircraft carrier. However, Russia can easily attack Eastern Europe and cause chaos in the already struggling European Union economy. If anyone finds this unrealistic, let me remind you that Hitler rose to power during the Great Depression when Germany's economy was in ruins. Austria was annexed into the German Reich in 1938, and in 1939 the Nazis invaded Poland. So events can escalate quickly. Of course, back then, Germany had millions of surplus young men who could be put into military service. But Russia faces a major issue with this. However, Europe also faces a demographic crisis. If there's no one to defend it, Putin can manage with the forces he has. America will continue distancing itself from Europe. This will happen regardless, whether with Trump or without. Putin will keep up the pressure because all of his actions are driven by the same law of Khalyava. He got Russia's vast natural resources for free, and he feels that he, himself, is not deserving of respect. And he craves respect. This is precisely why he started his war. His ancient behavioral program tells him, go raise your social status by force. Let them not love you, but at least let them fear you. For his personality type, this feeling is crucial. If anyone is interested in understanding Vladimir Putin's psychological profile, I have a separate video on this topic. See the description below. Europe needs to do the same thing as America, audit the flow of Khalyava and figure out where its money is going. What is more important, maintaining security or sponsoring projects created purely for embezzling funds? Europe needs a modern army, with drones as its main strike force. The value of human life in Europe is very high, so defense must rely on technology. Europe also needs to boost birth rates. And this is only possible if the status of wife and mother is seen as equally prestigious as that of a successful working woman. The world is not ruled by love, but by the desire for social success. People are willing to do anything just so their peers see them as valuable individuals. If the current norm is that business women are admirable and mothers are not, women will make the corresponding choice. However, this is a separate topic for discussion, and maybe I'll get into it one day. No one will save Europe. If it wants to survive in its current form, it will need to gather strength and figure out how to become a prickly hedgehog. If not, future generations of writers and historians will have plenty to write about. Consistently receiving Khalyava from any source leads people to either live like con artists who need to outsmart others, or to regress into a state of artificial childhood. They move down the social ladder to a place where, in traditional societies, children sat, where no one asked them anything or expect anything from them. Some people are okay with this position, but if they are not, no amount of money or benefits will make the recipient of Khalyava happy. By accepting it, they lose the most important thing, their self-respect and agency. People stop talking to them because their opinion no longer matters. Khalyava is like water. You can't live without it because we use it to build personal and business relationships and to help those in need. But if it is not carefully managed, it becomes contaminated and poisons everything around. It'll be stolen, corruption schemes will be built on them, and social discontent and mistrust will grow. For healthy relationships to form, the giver shouldn't be arrogant, thinking they know everything and understand everything. The recipient should have the chance to repay the kindness. It's very important for everyone to have the opportunity to earn and prove themselves. It's one thing to inherit $1 million and another thing entirely to earn it through one's own mind and hard work. In the first case, the person will spend their life proving to themselves and others that they are worthy of the million. In the second, they will strive to earn another one. The second option is far more beneficial for society. This is how we get taxes, new products, and inventions. If refugees are just given welfare, they will feel inadequate, and instead of gratitude, they'll have contempt for the suckers they've conned out of money. It's completely different if we give them the opportunity to gain respect and high social status through perseverance and hard work. Yes, not everyone will succeed, but if this opportunity exists, it will completely change the social dynamic within the migrant communities. In fact, for centuries, humanity has been trying to figure out the best way to distribute Khalyava. The ideologies of communism and socialism grew out of these attempts. But for now, that's all. If I was able to provide value to you with this video, please consider giving a super thanks or clicking on the join button to support my channel. Thank you all and see you soon.